Hey everyone, Rory Extra Life here. If you don't know me, I'm a Pokemon TCG player and occasional VGC player based in the northeast of Scotland. And if you do know me, you'll know I am a bit sick and tired of seeing Dragapult doing well in the meta recently. It is a good deck and I do enjoy playing it as well sometimes, but the meta shares at recent events have been catastrophic to say the least. But the good news is that we do have not only a new set releasing this week in Chaos Rising, but also this morning, full set list reveal for Abyss Eye in Japan, which is coming out soon, which will then become our Pitch Black set in June, July. Can't remember the exact date. But we've got the full set list. So today, we're going to spend some time having a look at it and just seeing when we're going to be able to hopefully put Dragapult to bed, because it's whoo. I've had a brief look through this, kind of picked up on a couple of key points that might not be fantastic. Some things might be really good though, but let's just dive into it. We've always got a bunch of cards that look the type that'll do well in a pre-release but not outside of a pre-release. So Tropius letting you search the top 6 cards of your deck and reveal any number of Pokemon there. Could be decent in a deck that has a lot of like rule boxes and stuff that you can't quite find with Pokepad or Buddy Buddy Poffin, but it's basically Great Ball-ish. Lurantis EX. It's got some potential for being a bit memey, I think. If this Pokemon healed during this turn, this attack does 200 more damage. So 260 damage, which with a grass deck, that's gonna, even without the weakness, that's gonna kill a lot of stuff. But with the weakness, it'll do quite well. That said, the healing during your turn to make it happen, there's a couple of Pokemon that will heal with an ability, I suppose. Item card related, you can't really use Ice Cream because you don't really need 3 energy to attack, and there's no like extra energy requirements as part of the second attack at all. And because it's not Omega, you can't use Wallies, so healing it's a bit, I mean, it's possible, but at the same time, I don't know. Poltergeist and Sinister, this is kind of where I'm starting to get a bit happy with this list. The Ghost Veil ability can't be affected by effects of attacks or abilities from your opponent's Pokemon. The key problem there is Dragapult. This basically, like this ability, and we'll see it a lot throughout this list, by the way, this ability is quite good, and it pairs well with some of the attacks that these Pokemon have. And I'm thinking that there is definitely something there. It seems kind of reminiscent of like Lost Box, where you're actively choosing to discard cards, and then based on how many of those cards there are, you have different modifiers for your attacks. In this case, rather than putting them in the lost zone, they go in the discard, so you can get them back out afterwards. But the attacks of Poltergeist and Sinister, they're not great, but I can see them being part of a Ghost Veil deck just as discard fodder. Match a spin for 1 colorless if you have 6 or more Pokemon in your discard. Place 4 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon. That could be a bit spicy, actually. I do quite like that. That's pretty tasty. The annoying thing is, though, with the damage counters is if it's a mirror match, you're kind of scuffed. you're kind of scuffed. It's unfortunate there. This Ghost Veil ability inherently blocks Monkey Dory. It inherently blocks Dusknoir, and it blocks the 6 damage counters from Dragapult as well. And generally, you're looking at it being a single Prizer deck. So Dragapult's going to struggle as well if you're able to get those big knockouts with it. Heatran, it turns into a wall Pokemon if your opponent's Pokemon is burned, but Switch, Evolve, gets rid of the burn. So I think this Sizzlipede does look a bit interesting. The 3 energy requirement is a bit rough because it's not an evolution Pokemon, so you can't just go straight in with Ignition. However, reveal the bottom 7 cards of your deck. This attack does 50 damage times the number of Pokemon that have the Bug Panic attack. I don't think I've seen any other Pokemon with Bug Panic. I think it is just Sizzlipede. So while this does look like it's got some potential to be powerful, it caps out at 350. And it's going to be very similar to United Wings but more random. So unless there's any good ways to force Pokemon to the bottom of your deck, which off the top of my head, I can't think of any, then we're kind of in a bit of a problem there. Charcadet, 40 damage for 1 fire energy. I mean, it could be a viable addition to Cerulege EX, I guess, but at the same time, like, this could probably be the better of the 80 HP ones, but I feel like the 70 HP is where you want to be with Cerulege. Flame Legion, I sense that this is going to be a pre-release. I feel like this is going to be a pre-release card. It's like 40 damage plus an extra 40 for each fire energy attached, so you took in 240 damage. Fire energy attached to benched Pokemon. So 240 damage cap, unless you're playing Area Zero, then it's what 360? Okay, it's got potential there. But generally, I sense it being a pre-release card. Now this though, this I do like. The Wailord EX. 5 water energy cost is insane, but we'll get to that later. 270 damage, this Pokemon is now asleep. Pair that with the bubbly energy that's coming out with Chaos Rising this week, then that asleep just gets ignored. 270 damage flat. The Vive energy cost is rough, but there's a number of Pokemon in format that can make that work. And also 380, slap a cape on there, you're talking 480 HP. Mate. There's just going to be a wall. Seeking, 30 damage for each water energy attached to this Pokemon to one of your opponent's Pokemon. It could be good. Now, this Relicanth, for a 1 colorless cost, you slap 2 fossils on the bench, which if you use the Stadium, which I can't remember if it's coming out in Chaos Rising or if it's in Abyssai, for every fossil you've got on the bench, it does extra 30 damage for 1 colorless energy. And considering there's a Stadium that searches out 2 fossils, you do that, plus you have 1 in hand as well. Like, you're talking 100 damage turn 1 for 1 colorless. Wild. I feel like any fossil deck, it's a requirement to have at least one of these in there. Primarina looks pretty interesting. I think the various tank Pokemon cards, such as the Wailord that we just mentioned, Kangaskhan could be good for it as well. But basically, once during your turn, when you evolve, use this card to evolve your Pokemon, heal damage from one of your Pokemon. So if that Wailord with a Hero's Cape on it is so close to being taken out, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to heal all of that back. Disgusting. There's potential there. There's potential there. Palafin, 80 plus 200 damage if your opponent has 1 prize card remaining. So the 2 energy cost plus it being a stage 1 with that attack is rough. Otherwise, it could be, I guess, a considerably better Blood Moon or Saluna. But at the same time, I don't know, man. Manectric, there's a lot of walls going on. There's a lot of walls going on in this format. So 50 damage during your opponent's turn, prevent all damage done to this Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's evolution Pokemon. That, and the Mega Manectric, which does the same thing, but for basic Pokemon, I think Manectric might make a comeback. Vikavolt, quick dive, 50 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon for one electric energy. Which, of course, pairing it up with the Bolty energy, which is mentioned in the second attack, which we'll get to later on. I think that's not going to be too bad. The stage 2 of it all is a bit rough. Like, it's got potential to do some chunky damage. I think the dive attack, though, is like, but for 2 energy, Giga Electromagnetic Blaster, 260 damage. If this Pokemon doesn't have Bolty energy attached, this attack does nothing. So you attach a Bolty energy, you crispin the other one on, you've got 280 damage, which again is because of the Bolty energy. We'll look at that later. On a single prize stage 2. That's that's got potential for sure. Mega Zeraora EX, 60 damage times the number of lightning energy attached to this Pokemon. But also, if you make sure that they're all Bolty energy, then that turns into 80 damage per attached, which is nice. And 150 damage pivot. I think the problem is there's not a huge amount of electric energy acceleration in this format. Like, we've got electric, but then that's a stage 1, requires this to be on the bench. There's definitely something there. I think there's definitely something there. I think it'll take a lot of just like grinding out in the lab to try and figure out a list that works with this. The loss of electric generator is rough for this card. I think if we had electric generator in this format, it would be a lot scarier. So this here is another weird little archetype that's being introduced. And we're starting off with a Slowpoke. Its second attack doesn't matter, but its first attack, you can just discard as many cards from your hand as you like. Could pair well with the Ghost Veil team, potentially, if you want to really ramp up how many cards you get in the discard. But having it as an attack is a bit rough. But its evolution, Slowbro, if you have no cards in hand, this attack does 160 more damage. I can potentially see this being paired up with like a Dragonair line. I think a Dragonair line could be good because then you can discard your entire hand, and if you've got a Dragonair on the bench and it's got an energy attached, which, considering this attack only costs 1 energy, you're going to have that attach. You can discard basically everything, use the Dragonair to find the Slowbro, bosh, have an empty hand, 210 damage, which takes out basically most basic EXs. Shop it back onto the Ghost Veil, and I think the next couple of cards will be Ghost Veil heavy, just because we're into the Ghost section. It's the Banette more than anything for 1 Psychic Energy, 80 damage, which is, for 1 Psychic, not too bad at all. And you can search your deck for any card and just put it in your hand. Leaves you liable to things like Judge, special red card, but if you don't get hit with that, if it's early game, you search your deck for that card, could be pretty good. Soul End. Now this, I think, is the meat and potatoes of the Ghost Veil ability Pokemon. Choose 2 of your opponent's Pokemon and quadruple the number of damage counters on each of them. That's insane. If you're just doing that right after like the Poltergeist, then that's going to be like turn it from 40 to 160. The key problem here is you need 13 or more Pokemon in your discard with the Ghost Veil ability. So you're going to need to be discarding a lot, or you're going to have to let a lot of Pokemon die. That said, if it's a very single price heavy deck, you could, in theory, be looking at this being like the closer. You've got a bunch of Pokemon with damage counters there, damage counters there, damage counters there, damage counters there. It's something where it's like, this is the Pokemon you just slap into active on your last turn of the game, slap a Psychic Energy on it, and then boom. The Mega Chandelure. Oh yeah, here we go. Returning Light's Lampent. Basically, there was a Curlier like this, but you evolve 1 Litwick, and then you're suddenly like, I would like to put 3 Lampent on my bench. And then the next turn, you can then just evolve all of them into Mega Chandelure EX, which your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost is 1 colorless more. So if you add 3 to it, then damn. Not only that, its attack does an extra 50 damage for each colorless in your opponent's active retreat cost. So even without that ability active, that's doing an extra, it's doing 330 to Wailord. Plus that ability, 380. So if the Wailord meta picks up, Chandelure is going to be a hard counter for it. Delmise, not sure how to go with that one. 30 damage, but if you have 4 or more Pokemon in your discard with the Ghost Veil ability, this attack does 140 more damage. 170 damage, turn 1, if you discard, like, if you use 2 Ultra Balls. Welcome back to the format Cramorant from Lost Origin, because that's basically that. Like, just more powerful, and a Psychic type as well, which is nice. I think this just nukes Lucario in 1 hit. Because what is that? 170 damage. Like, I think that just takes out Mega Lucario in 1 hit. I think with a Clefairy bench, what is that? Yeah, 170, 300. If you put a Lily's Clefairy bench, this takes out a Dragapult. Wild. I think we're finally seeing the light. I think this is going to be a player. Like that's solid. You could even just literally have a deck that's just about this Pokemon. Because that 170 damage for a single prizer, wild. For 340 damage on weakness, insane. Rampardos. So we are liking this ability. Once during your turn, if this Pokemon is in the active spot, you may flip a coin if heads, discard 1 energy from your opponent's active Pokemon. We saw how powerful the ability to discard energy was with Andrew Hedrick's performance at the Los Angeles Regionals this weekend, where it was Dragapult with 4 Crushing Hammers. I think having a permanent Crushing Hammer on the field as and when you need it, it's not bad. And not to mention, if you leave this active and you can swing a couple turns in a row, 2 fighting energy for 300 damage, chuck a Hero's Cape on there, it's having to take 3 hits from Dragapult for it to go down. That's not bad. The Big Daddy, Mega Darkrai EX, massive eyeball, giving me very, very big Roaring Moon EX vibes. If your opponent's active Pokemon is affected by any special condition, it's now knocked out. There's also an item you can play, which basically guarantees that your opponent's Pokemon suffers a special condition as well. Like, it's basically just farms free knockouts for 3 Darkness Energy. Combine that with Toxtricity. I mean, it's got potential. And with it being an item, not a supporter, literally boss item, knockout, anything on the field, anytime. And on top of that, 220 damage for 2 Darkness Energy. Could be good. Morpeko EX. Wheel draw, shuffle your hand into your deck, then draw 6 cards. But also 40 damage for each damage counter on this Pokemon. You just literally use Toxtricity twice on it. It's got 40 damage counters. It does 160 damage. Use it a third time, then 240 damage. Oh no, 200 damage for with 4 damage counters on it. I forgot it's 40 plus. And then yeah, literally 280 damage if it has 3 energy attached through Toxtricity. Like, it could be good. I think if you go for a Darkness box or like a Tox box type thing, this could be a potential player. Would it do well in the meta? I don't know. It's self-damaging. It's only got 108 HP and it's weak to grass. So we're in a very grass-heavy format at the moment, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Bastiodon. Now, this is one that I've been eyeing up as well, actually. And while this Pokemon is on your bench, prevent all damage done to your Pokemon by attacks from your opponent's Pokemon that have 2 or fewer energy attached. Gee. Is it all damage in effect? Only damage. So, I'm thinking. I'm struggling to think of any Pokemon that only require 2 energy to attack that would be pretty prevalent in the meta that would struggle if they weren't able to do that 200 damage and they could only use the 6 damage counters on the bench. It'll come to me at some point. I think with it being a stage 2 fossil, it has potential to be a very good wall deck. Like, Ogerpon needs 2 energy. The other Ogerpon needs... Oh no, Ogerpon needs 3 energy. The other Ogerpon needs 3 energy. Zoroark is only 2, so it prevents Zoroark, but again, it is just a case of attaching extra energy and it kills the effect. But if you're wasting that energy, then, or if you're forcing them to waste that energy to attack, that means that they're not playing the energy properly, and that opens you up for more other strategies, I suppose. I mean, it feels like it's good into Dragapult, and that's about it. Toucannon finally getting a card for the first time in ages, I think. 60 damage plus 21 damage for each bench Pokemon in play, both yours and your opponent's. So that's what? 260 for 2 full benches for 1 energy? That's not bad. And then its ability, once you're turning me, draw a card. It's not bad. This could be something. There's something there. Type Null and Silvally getting a card again. Once during your turn, you may use this ability if you have no cards in your hand. Search your deck for a support card, reveal it, put it into your hand. Shuffle your deck. There's a lot of this whole discard down to 0. And the fact that there's also a Pokemon, there's a supporter, sorry, that involves discard, like having no cards in hand. Cassiopeia from Shrouded Fable, I believe, was you can usually use this if it's the last card in your hand. I think this is the same with Larry's skill as well. So we could start to see those pop up a bit, because there's not many people running those cards at all. Dark Bell, both active Pokemon except any dark Pokemon are now confused. This pairs in with that Darkrai that we saw earlier on, forcing the special condition, and then bosh, it's dead. Got a bunch of fossils here. One that is basically Rocky Helmet fossil, and one that just takes less damage. Heroic Bomb, if this Pokemon this card is attached to is not a Mega, and takes 240 more damage from the opponent's active Mega Pokemon EX, place 12 damage counters on the attacking Pokemon that discard your card. It doesn't specify, but I'm assuming that this also means even if this Pokemon's knocked out. It's a Boxer Disaster, but more specific, I think. Retry Badge. Now, this one is quite interesting. This one is going to be any deck that runs Kangaskhan with the intent to attack with it will be running multiple copies of this. Because once during your turn, after you flip any coins for the attack of a colorless Pokemon this card is attached to, you can ignore the results of those coin flips and begin again. So if you swing for 2, if you need to swing for a certain amount of damage, and you don't hit that damage and you want to gamble and try again, just go for it. You can only do it once, of course, but that's funny. They really looked at Mega Kangaskhan and thought, it's missing something. Misty's Energy. Now, this is what I was talking about earlier with the Wailord. Search your deck for up to 4 basic water energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon, then shuffle your deck. Your turn ends. It's rough because you kind of have to then leave that Pokemon in a vulnerable position, so you want to do it after you evolve, I guess. But I don't know. It's rough. It's a rough one. I think it's only really going to see play in specific decks. Gladion's Decisive Battle. You can only play this if it's the last card in your hand, which pairs well with the Silvally. During this turn, attacks used by your Pokemon that do not have a rule box deal 80 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. That fixes a lot of maths that Black Belt sometimes struggles to do. But it's limited to rule box, and you can only play this card if it's the last card in your hand. There's a lot of that going on. There is a lot of that going on at the moment. Rust Syndicate Grunt. You can only play this card if one of your Pokemon was knocked out during your opponent's last turn. Crushing Hammer, but guaranteed. Gwyn pairs well with that Ghost Veil ability archetype that we were looking at earlier on. Discard up to 2 Pokemon from your hand, excluding Rulebox Pokemon. Draw 3 cards for each Pokemon discarded this way. It's not bad. This is it, the Fossil Excavation Site. So it was in this set. So this pairs up with the fossils that we were looking at earlier. Search your deck for up to 2 training cards with Antique in the name, which will be the fossils, and then put them onto your bench and shuffle your deck. Pretty good, especially considering that things like Item Lock from Badoo will prevent you from being able to play the fossils onto your bench, because they're technically items until they're in play. I think if you're running a fossil deck, literally like a couple of those in there would be magical. So it kind of does then also work as a way to search them out better than a Buddy Poffin would. Bolty Energy. This, as long as this card is attached to a Pokemon, it provides 1 lightning energy. The attacks of this Pokemon, the lightning Pokemon this card is attached to, do 20 more damage to your opponent's active. That's pretty hot. I'm not going to lie. A couple of those attached, plus 20, plus 40, plus 60. And then the shadowy one, prevent all damage done by your opponent's attacks to the benched Pokemon. So that's nice for any decks that have a reliance on dealing damage to bench. Not damage counters. Still need Mist Energy for that bit. To bench. Let's go back and look at the Lightning Pokemon now that we've revealed the Lightning Energy that's there. So this Zeraora, 60 damage per Lightning Energy attached. plus 20, so it just, if you use only Bolty energy, then that turns into 80 damage per 8, 160, 240, 320. For 4 Bolty energy, that's a hell of a commitment, though. I think I think energy acceleration for this deck is going to be the puzzle piece. 150 and then pivot as well, 170, 190, 210 if you only use Bolty energy. So that could be good. That could be nice. This one as well, literally, this needs Bolty energy, so 260 plus 20, 280. And if your second energy is also Bolty energy, 300 damage on stage 2 basic is wild. So crazy. No drawbacks either. Like, it literally just swings. Literally chuck a hero's cape on it. 260 health. What? Throw max spell on it, 350 damage, or even 330 damage for 1 Bolty energy to meet the requirement. Like, it feels like a lot of this set is, we need to deal with the Dragapult problem now. And yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for this set review. It's looking promising. There's a couple of our new-ish archetypes that I'm seeing coming out of it. Like the Ghost Veil one looks pretty solid. The lightning Pokemon I think that lightning energy hits the spot real nice. And then also Wailord looks like it'll be hilarious. I'm intrigued as to how the no card in hand Pokemon works out, but I think there just needs to be a better way to discard Pokemon and discard cards from your hand, like through will. Otherwise, that does become a bit of a problem. But I mean, what you're talking? That Slowbro. Where's my mouse? That Slowbro that's hitting for. Where is it? Hitting for 210 damage plus 80 damage, 290 damage if you use Gladion for 1 psychic energy. There's a lot of big hit and single prizes out there at the moment. I think TPC and TPCI have looked at this and thought, Dragapult's a problem, we need to fix it now. But that's going to be it for today. Let me know in the comments if there's any cards from this set or any archetypes from the set that you're quite interested in, that you think you might end up playing when the set releases. Feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.